In Wizard101, gear is an essential part of a wizard. It can allow the player to become a tactical nuke, a spongy meat bag, or your therapist in an instant. What would happen though if you mixed and matched pieces of gear from a respective role and created some sort of Frankenstein monstrosity? That is why we asked the question, can you beat Dragonspire by being a garbage man? The rules for this challenge are simple. You start out with a deck and no gear. Any piece of gear you pick up from an enemy has to be equipped. Newer pieces of gear replaces the old one. It doesn't matter if the stats are worse or better, you have to equip it. So there is an exception to this gear rule, is if you don't qualify as the school type or level, you can't really equip it no matter how hard you try. Lastly, just have fun. In each of the worlds that I've come across, I've mastered a different field of study. In Wizard City, I learned to summon some powerful muscular boys. In Cracktopia, I learned the way of the sword. In Wisteria, I wielded Zeus's lightning. In Marleybone, I stripped naked. And finally, in Mushu, I faced my demons head-on. Now the time came to throw everything away to become a garbage man. You see, I had been too comfortable with pets, wands, and gear. Garbage men have nothing, but through collecting trash, it is what makes them powerful. Through collecting, they can go from rags to riches. Dragonspire was a utopian world full of life, but Maelstar brought ruin with his luscious locks and cold-hearted demeanor. In one fell swoop, the world was destroyed and turned into a volcanic wasteland for one man's Dragon Ball-inspired wish. So before I could head out on a hero's journey, I knew I had to prepare first. I went to craft a gear vault to store all my items I had previously. After the clothes were perfectly stacked into the flat metallic rectangle, I was fully naked and ready to head to Uncle Ambrose's office. As it turned out, I did this on the wrong character and wasted about 15 minutes. Another half an hour and 3 cans of G Fuel from an old lady later, I proceeded with my quest. The first test to get into Dragonspire was to fight a bald man known as Cirrus. Legend has it he became cranky due to his hair loss. It was a clash for the ages, a bald man versus the naked man. You might ask, who would win? Well, an elephant of course. I had been granted access to Dragonspire and was off to rescue Maelstar, the damsel in distress. Unfortunately, although Maelstar did have hair, it was not long enough for me to climb all the way to his tower. So I had to figure out something else to get there. And the only way to do that was to gain access through the 3 main gates, which only opened for those who had a magic rock. Milo directed me to the tower archives where I met this weird lizard guy. He said if I wanted the stones, I needed to run some errands for it. How come you can't get anything for free in this game? Anyways, the first few battles did not prove to be a fruitful endeavor. It became more of a learning experience, as I couldn't jump in there without strategizing. From my failures came a seed that bloomed into a beautiful flower, which later wilted, just as nature intended. I knew I needed help, so I summoned the almighty skinny boy in attack mode. It has a special effect of when normal summoned, it will attack every turn even when you don't want it to. The first roadblock came in the form of Mr. Pedro, the Gloomstalker. Not only does this guy have a lot more health, but he is ice, which is very defensive. I took drastic measures, and I wasn't gonna play around, and that's why I summoned the Muscular Boy Champion. His help was invaluable in chipping away at the stalker's health. With the man's dying breath, he gave me my first piece of gear, which doesn't really mean anything because I can't wear it. After running all the errands, I went back to the Lizard Man and met him in one of the towers. Unfortunately, I had been Smeckledorfed by both the Lizard and the Muscular Boy Champion. Luckily though, I still had one Muscular Boy, which also took the form of a bald Muscular Boy. The crushing blow was enough to send it to the graveyard, where it belonged. When everything looked grim, I used my ace card, Monster Reborn. I brought back the champion from the grave to my side of the field. Santa attack season stood no chance, as our combined muscle was enough to destroy him. Great, another hat I can't wear. Returning back to Milo without a rock in hand, I had received a hat that was the right school, but I couldn't wear it because of the level. So a quick note here without the dry voice, I won't be able to use any gear up until the last few parts of the world due to my level at the time. So unfortunately for me, you'll have to keep seeing the garbage man just hoard gear, but not wear it for a little bit. Before I headed to the next area, I took about an hour or so to finish up school quests, fishing, and buying up treasure cards. I find it odd though that Cirrus is in 2 places at once, Dragonspire and the Myth School. Now you'll notice I switched mounts because I was tired of seeing the back of a broom handle, so now you'll be seeing a lot of horse ass. Now don't panic, that's still within the confines of the rules, it doesn't change any stats, we didn't upgrade to a Lamborghini. Regardless, I headed to the plaza of the ghost people, because surprisingly, we didn't get the rock we needed yet. I decided to use my newfound power, known as the bulky boy with nose ring. It was right then and there that I realized this was the worst card I ever used. I got my ass handed to me by something called syphilis twice, while the minion just shielded and healed itself. So I went back to the old reliable strats, which then allowed me to summon the great and almighty Rat Magician. I gained a new power from defeating stronger enemies. By sacrificing one skinny boy, I could summon more powerful creatures. The new power was called Tribute Summoning. Next, I went through a tower of enemies just to read a book and found my second roadblock, the Abstinence Gang. You know, I get they provide protection of some kind in the form of buffs, but how much fucking protection do you need? Needless to say, their defenses were impenetrable. So I did what I could do. Summon the Rat Magician, who showed them the error of their ways. The next few bosses were relatively simple, since all you needed to do was buff up and shield yourself. A few more quests later, I was able to go to the Grand Chasm. There I saw spiders and ghosts for some reason. Also woodies, Freddy Krueger-like magma men, and small birds. At this point, Dragonspire seemed like a world for a carnival freak show attraction. After several more gauntlets, I made my way back to the past. You see, I have to gain the trust of some old guy with arthritis in the past, so he will give me a rock I need in the present. Sounds confusing, I know. But unfortunately, a big elephant stood in the way, so I sacrificed one of my skinny boys to the graveyard in order to summon the dreaded Dark Paladin. It stood no chance and fell flat on the ground. Going back to the present, he had been turned into a ghost and didn't recognize me. So I had to beat some sense into him. Or rather, the Croc Magician girl had to. One twirling dust slice attack! After retrieving the rock, I was able to go through the second portal into the Necro Palace. I was then asked by Cirrus to raid the tombs of a dead woman. She didn't take too kindly to my raid, so I summoned someone whom she would listen to reason with. An old familiar figure, Maelstar himself. This was the real betrayal. As she trembled and folded, her defeat granted me this nice loincloth that should allow me access into the Dragonspire Academy of Arts and Crafts. I took it back to Cirrus, and he said it was a badge. That's not a badge, you Mr. Potato-headed looking Patrick Stewart. Now these are badges. Anyways, I was told to head into the Necro Palace to become a student at this broken down abandoned school. The first step was to learn the art of friendship between human and Pokemon. So in order to do that, I gathered textbooks from lizards, have the narrator read me dialogue from statues. The last step was to unite a man named Tumor with his special flying Camerupt. I was asked to collect his whip, which he uses to train Pokemon with. Somehow the collector had it, and now roams the street as a ghost picking up lost pocket change. You know what they say, one man's trash is, well, still one man's trash. It was a hard-fought battle, but I summoned the great Rat Magician to finish her off. Pulverizing Hammer Smash! After everything was said and done, I reunited the two friends together and had a whole new outlook on life. I thought maybe weird deformed long-necked Charizards can be friends with ghost pirates after all. I had passed the friendship test. I was on to the next one. In the Crucible, I beat up some more lizards. This was quite possibly the worst area in the game, just mainly due to how many bosses you have to fight. Zanzibar told me in order to learn the history of this foul place, I must battle the fallen losers of war. This was my second step and test to earn a flying Charizard with a hole in its back. But more importantly, it would give me a lift to my beloved Maelstar. The first ghost was relatively simple to deal with. After that, I was off to face multiple waves of enemies again and again before reaching another boss. I don't know why, but the whole gauntlet style with the staircase leading downwards seems to be only exclusive to this world in Wizard101. Through the end of the dark staircase, there was no light, but a feral-hooded homeless dude who suddenly attacked. The enemy was seemingly too strong, so I had to summon the voluptuous Croc Magician Girl to banish him into the Shadow Realm. After this, I learned a valuable lesson, which served me with the next boss called Katie, which ironically is the only normal sounding name in this place. Now, what was that lesson, you might ask? It's called, if you want to get shit done, you gotta do it yourself. Multiple rage quits later, I was able to take her down with an old acquaintance from the old days I spent in the world of Mushu. Several more fights later, I met my match and decided to summon the Rat Magician again. It ultimately proved to be useless, as the magician seemingly received one too many blows to the head. Look, I get the whole fight fire with fire, but you can't fight ice with ice. It doesn't work. Anyways, I replenished my health and was soon back to the battlefield to get my revenge. I was then asked by Zamazenta to retrieve a crystal containing the last loser I'd have to put to shame. Fast forward to the many woodies, ghosts, and the birds from bird action. I'd retrieved the crystal. It only took 40 minutes to get this hunk of shit. Oh, and my favorite ghost and goblins Easter egg called do the whole dungeon all over again. But I was ready to finish my second test. Before I faced him, he told me the story of how he was bullied in school and got his ass beat. It was quite a lengthy battle with back and forth action. This time I actually used shields, because there's no way in hell I'm face tanking these hits without anything to back it up. We were neck and neck, but in the end, it doesn't even matter, since he was always a loser. I had passed the test with flying colors, and now it came time to become an honorary student of whatever this place is. Unfortunately for me, to become a student, I must be given some imaginary seal of approval by a man in prison. What the fuck, dude? Just let me into the damn private school. I passed the SAT and ACTs already. With no points into speech, it was a no-go, so I needed to visit the dean. Inside the prison, I was pitted against various inmates, such as the Silver Surfer. I could see the enemies were getting tougher now, which meant one of two things. I needed to level up soon, or cheeks are gonna start a-clapping. Philosophers have often pondered this question: which came first, the chicken or the egg? While I don't know that answer, what was obvious was that I was not leveled up yet. After many close calls with the inmates, I took each of them down one by one and paid a visit to the dean. I was then tasked by the dean to take back some of his belongings from the prison staff, which ironically is stuff I can't wear. If this shit makes the dean so powerful, why can't I have it? I can't even wear anything. A couple of Hulk-themed smashes later, the prison staff soon learned the true meaning in the heart of the cards. Returning to the dean, I had leveled up to 45, which finally gave me access to the gear in this world. Sadly, you see all this gear that I've gotten so far from questing? I can't wear it. So for now, I was still buck naked. As it turns out, I had been fooled, and Speckledorfed again. Why do villains in Wizard101 always have this quality? My first fight with the dean did not pan out all that well, as his undead deck of cards was a force to be reckoned with. I went back to old reliable strats and finished him with relative ease. Here's a quick fact: deaf school creatures are the only school creatures that don't carry a single shield against their opposing school. Anyways, defeating him granted me a ragged hood I couldn't wear, a rock I needed, and the dean's word that I was admitted into his private school. I went back to Cirrus and was given a vestment. I'm not a priest, but whatever, I'll take it. I learned of Maelstar's grand scheme, which was to help out the most oppressed group of all, gamers. I'm kidding, he probably used the Dragon Balls to wish for starting a dad band, I don't fucking know. What I do know though, is right after I received my vestment, it was time to switch it out for something else. After taking care of some business for Cirrus, I was sent to a broccoli stump with a face. I was then given a ring, which seemed pretty nice. The broccoli stump told me to collect all the parts to a magical wand, which were scattered across the worlds. Before I did that though, I went to the Wizard City Bazaar and sold all the garbage I hoarded for gold. Going back to see the worlds and grabbing those wand parts reminded me of all the bad times I had to suffer through. After getting all the parts, I went back to the weird Muppet and got another downgrade. Great. I was then told to head to Grove Street for a crystal staff head. There I met a lady who could chisel me the finest crystal in all the Deadland. I received some nice boots, got my ass handed to me by the Cro-Magnon, beat the Cro-Magnon, and got the crystal I spent 1 hour looking for. I also wasn't in the mood to play trifold mind checkers with these albino spiders. The next step was to assemble the wand together, and in the process I received a hood, I think, and finally got a wand. It's no weapon of the Greek gods nor titans, but it will do for now. Once I had gotten the staff, it became an attire fit for a hobo king. I was finally free from making hand gestures like a mime. One of the perks to becoming a student here is the privilege to have your very own Charizard. Apparently, this wand allows me to command them. The first step was to retrieve an egg in the secure house, which apparently wasn't secure at all, but I did get this cap though, which looks the exact same as the so-called hood. Venturing forward into the house and defeating the waves of enemies, I received another piece of gear. Well, I mean it can't get any worse than this. At the end of the Gauntlet House of Fun, I came across a lady who had trouble putting words together. It was obvious that she became deranged from living in this secure house full of spiders, lava men, and rock hunks. I guided her towards the light from the front end of my spear and received a parting gift in return. Oh yeah, and the egg. The next step was to hatch it, which required smashing the egg with a hammer for some reason. Throughout the collection process, my boots were replaced because I stepped on crap. Unfortunately for me, some homeless dude stood in the way and was guarding the nest. I quickly dispatched him, and for my efforts was given an athame. After denting the newborn's head with my hammer, it was time to learn from the mother Charizards about breaking wind with honor or something, I don't know. Before I could fly my new Charizard towards the piece of shit blocking the sun, I had to craft some armor for it to endure the tough conditions of flight. In the forums, I met a man named Vidor who was willing to teach me how to become a blacksmith in the span of 30 minutes. I fought through multiple waves of enemies, and even one boss who dropped me a nice pair of boots I couldn't wear yet. I gathered the necessary ingredients to make the most powerful armor for the young Charizard that we will never see or use again. Oh, and by crafting it, I gained a new robe, which is actually pretty useful. As the weird burning broccoli Muppet said, all that's left was to confront Maelstar. Going into Maelstar's castle in the sky, these were the stats I had to work with, which will inevitably change one more time. As I made my way up to the castle, many enemies stood in the way between us. They were minor inconveniences, but I took them out with medium difficulty. Throughout the entire ordeal, I had been bestowed upon many upgrades and downgrades, as well as Flintstone gummy vitamins for my invisible pet. Ascending up the magical square, I found 2 elephants. I decided to take on the pale-looking elephant because I wanted to test my dueling abilities on a harder enemy. From taking him down, he gave me something useful and shitty at the same time. Now, I'm someone who usually leaves no stone unturned or no enemy unscathed, so I took on the other elephant as well. It didn't go too well. Second time around without the henchman though, and the addition to having a good hand, gave me the edge over him. With the 2 elephants down, I opened the doors to even more enemies. However, they were dispatched with relative ease. In the process, they gave me even more garbage. Sandals of Lost Eons. It only gives 33 health. No wonder they were lost. Nobody wanted them. Proceeding into the final battle, these are what I have to work with. Not great, but it will do. After a heart-to-heart moment with Cirrus and his mom here, I confronted Maelstar. As expected, I died. However, I was determined to go at it again, even though the odds were stacked against me. I had the luck of the cards this time, and was even able to summon the Great Rat Magician, who finished off Maelstar with his lightning Magikarp splash attack. In Ambrose's office, the bald man apologized for putting me through all this. I talked to Ambrose, and he wanted me to go clear another world now. Not today, old man. So, can you beat Dragonspire as a garbage man? Did you fucking watch the video? Anyways, thank you for watching and supporting. If you're new to the channel, subscribing is just a click away. But with that, take care, and see you guys.